Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Kobe and I'm your favorite movie reviewer. Welcome back to the channel where we break down the most captivating Nollywood movies, uncover hidden messages, and explore the lessons behind every story. Today's review is of an emotional and suspense-filled drama titled The Hidden Truth. This movie follows the heartbreaking journey of Tony and Miriam, a loving couple whose marriage is slowly torn apart by years of childlessness, family pressure, betrayal, and devastating secrets. Sit back, grab your popcorn, and join me as we unravel every twist, every betrayal, and every emotional moment in today's review of The Hidden Truth. Meet the Adoyes, Tony Adoy and Miriam Adoy. For 8 years, Miriam prayed for only one thing: a child. Not wealth, not luxury, not fame, just one baby she could call her own. She and her husband, Tony, had been married for 5 years before the whispers began. At first, they were harmless. .it was just in a form of question. So, when are we carrying a baby? You've been married long enough. You shouldn't keep your husband waiting. Miriam will smiled and casually brush off the question without fuss. But every night, after everyone had gone home, she cried herself to sleep. Tony would hold her close. "My love," he would whisper, "don't let anyone pressure you. God's time is the best." Those words comforted her. She believed her husband was her greatest source of strength. She had no idea that the greatest burden she carried was not childlessness. It was believing she alone was responsible. As the years passed, the harmless questions turned into insults. Tony's mother stopped hiding her disappointment. His sisters mocked Miriam openly. Whenever Tony was away on business, they visited the house, not to comfort her, but to remind her of what she had not given their family. A woman without a child has not completed her assignment. Our brother deserves an heir. Maybe you should release him to marry another wife. Every word cut deeper than the last. Miriam smiled in front of them, then locked herself in the bathroom and cried. Refusing to give up, Miriam chased every possible solution. Everywhere someone claimed to have the answer, Miriam went. She visited renowned gynecologists for fertility solutions. She attended healing crusades. She traveled to mountains for prayer. She drank bitter herbal mixtures. She visited traditional healers. She fasted for days. Friends recommended prophets. Neighbors recommended spiritual homes. She became so desperate that she volunteered for experimental fertility treatments simply because someone told her it worked for another woman. One afternoon, Miriam sat quietly in Dr. Felix's office after another round of tests. The doctor studied her file, then looked at her. "Miriam, all your test results are normal. I can't find any obvious problem affecting your fertility." Miriam looked confused. "So why am I not pregnant?" Dr. Felix leaned forward. "I'd like your husband to come in for a fertility evaluation as well." Miriam immediately shook her head. "My husband? No, doctor. The problem is me. My husband is perfectly healthy." Dr. Felix smiled gently. "Miriam, pregnancy involves both husband and wife. It's important that we evaluate both of you." She laughed softly. "Doctor, before we got married, I became pregnant by my husband 3 different times. He can't possibly be the problem." Dr. Felix did not argue. He simply wrote something on her file. "Please bring him anyway." Miriam never did. What Miriam never understands is that lifestyle changes people's body systems. Tony lives a lifestyle of drinking alcohol and is a chronic smoker, and subsequently, these lifestyles can change someone's body anatomy. Tony had become a heavy smoker, a chronic drinker, late nights, alcohol, stress, poor eating habits. His health had slowly changed over the years, but because he had once made Miriam pregnant, neither of them imagined his fertility could have changed. 3 more years passed. Their marriage entered its 8th year. Then, after years of emotional pressure and disappointment, Tony found himself growing closer to a colleague at the bank named Barbara. Barbara was intelligent, confident, and effortlessly charming. She carried herself with grace, spoke with confidence, and had a warm personality that made people feel comfortable around her. As one of Tony's colleagues at the bank, she was ambitious, well-spoken, and always knew how to brighten even the most stressful workday. Over time, Barbara became more than just a co-worker. She became Tony's trusted confidant. She listened without judgment as he poured out his frustrations about the constant pressure from his family to have a child, the emotional strain in his marriage, and the silent pain he carried behind his smile. They had worked together for years, and she knew almost everything about Tony's struggles at home. She had listened to him vent about the endless pressure from his family to have a child, the constant arguments with Miriam, and the emotional toll their childlessness had taken on their marriage. Unlike many people in Tony's life, Barbara never criticized him or offered unsolicited advice. She simply listened, comforted him, and made him feel understood. Her empathy, confidence, and easygoing nature slowly drew Tony closer to her. At first, Tony convinced himself they were just friends. He told himself there was nothing wrong with having someone who understood him, but emotional closeness soon blurred into physical attraction. One evening after sharing drinks following a difficult day at work, they crossed a line they could never uncross. Their friendship became an affair. To Tony, Barbara was never meant to replace Miriam. He still loved his wife and had no intention of ending his marriage. Barbara was, in his mind, nothing more than a temporary distraction, a place where he could forget the pressures of his home, even if only for a few hours. But while Tony saw the relationship as casual, Barbara's feelings began to deepen. What Tony considered an escape, Barbara began to see as the beginning of a future. Neither of them realized that their choices were setting in motion a chain of events that would change all of their lives forever. As the weeks turned into months, Tony found himself spending more and more time with Barbara. They would leave the bank together almost every evening, stopping at a quiet restaurant for dinner or driving around the city, talking for hours. On weekends, Tony often found himself at Barbara's apartment, where they would spend the day watching movies, cooking together, laughing over old memories, and escaping the pressures of everyday life. Barbara's apartment became Tony's refuge, a place where there were no questions about children, no criticism from family members, and no reminders of the emotional struggles waiting for him at home. With Barbara, he felt heard. With Barbara, he felt appreciated. She listened patiently whenever he spoke about the pain he and Miriam had endured over the years. She comforted him when he was overwhelmed and encouraged him when he felt hopeless. The emotional bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Before long, the line between friendship and romance disappeared. Tony knew he was betraying his marriage, but he convinced himself it was only temporary. He told himself Barbara was merely a distraction from the stress consuming his home life, and that eventually everything would return to normal. He had no idea that every hour he spent at Barbara's apartment was pulling him further away from the woman who had stood beside him through the most difficult years of his life and closer to a secret that would soon change everything. One rainy evening, Tony arrived at Barbara's apartment after work. The atmosphere was different. Usually, Barbara would greet him with a warm embrace, but this time she sat quietly on the couch, nervously twisting her fingers. Tony sensed something was wrong. Tony, Barbara? What's going on? You look worried? Barbara looked into his eyes and took a deep breath. Barbara, I'm pregnant. Tony froze. The room suddenly felt silent. He stared at her, hoping he had heard wrongly. Tony, what did you just say? Barbara nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Barbara, I'm carrying your baby. For a moment, Tony couldn't speak. He slowly stood up and began pacing around the room. His heart was racing. This was the very thing he had secretly wished for years. Yet instead of joy, all he felt was fear. He thought of Miriam, 8 years of marriage, 8 years of unanswered prayers, 8 years of watching his wife endure ridicule from family and friends because they believed she was barren. How could he now return home with news that another woman was carrying his child? He stopped pacing and looked at Barbara. Tony, Barbara, listen to me. I care about you, but this pregnancy will destroy my marriage. My wife has suffered enough. Please, terminate it. Barbara looked at him in disbelief. Terminate it? You've been praying for a child all these years. Now God has finally answered your prayer, and you want me to kill your own baby? Tony sighed heavily. Tony, you don't understand. If Miriam hears this, it will break her. Barbara's expression hardened. Barbara, no, Tony. I've made my decision. I'm keeping this baby, And I'm done being your secret. Tony pleaded again. Please, let's think this through. Barbara shook her head. You've had enough time to think. Now it's my turn to act. Without another word, she picked up her handbag and walked out. The following morning, Barbara arrived at the home of Tony's elder sister, Mrs. Stella. She looked nervous but determined. Stella welcomed her warmly. My dear, what brings you here so early? Barbara lowered her eyes. I came because I don't know who else to talk to. She gently placed a hospital scan and pregnancy test on the table. I'm carrying Tony's child. Stella stared at the documents before looking back at Barbara. Then a broad smile spread across her face. For years we've prayed for this. Barbara nodded sadly. But Tony wants me to abort the baby. The smile instantly disappeared. What? Barbara fought back tears. He says he doesn't want to hurt Miriam. Stella slammed her hand on the table. Absolutely not. This child is a blessing. No one will touch that pregnancy. She held Barbara's hands firmly. Listen to me carefully. As long as I'm alive, no one will force you to terminate this baby. You will have this child, and Tony will take responsibility. Barbara finally smiled. Stella stood up with determination. It's time this family had an heir. I'm going to speak with Tony myself. As Barbara left the house, Stella picked up her phone and began calling other members of the family. Within hours, everyone knew. Barbara's pregnancy became a celebration. Tony's family embraced her immediately. One Saturday morning, they gathered in Tony's living room, ignoring Miriam completely. His elder sister spoke confidently. Tony, enough is enough. Miriam has waited 8 years. Barbara is carrying your child. Marry her before the baby is born. Miriam sat quietly, invisible, a guest in her own marriage. That night, she cried until morning. The man she had loved faithfully for 8 years had just gotten another woman pregnant. Now he stood beside Barbara, comforting her, while Miriam stood alone, carrying the painful label of a barren wife. No one cared how deeply it wounded her. No one stopped to ask how she felt. No one saw the tears she struggled to hide, not even Tony. At that moment, Miriam realized she had become a stranger in her own marriage. That night, she quietly walked into their bedroom and locked the door. She picked up their wedding photograph and held it tightly against her chest. As she stared at the smiling faces in the picture, memories of the vows they had made before God came flooding back. Promises of love, promises of faithfulness, promises to stand by each other through every storm. Now those promises felt like distant echoes. Tears streamed down her face. Her pillow became soaked with tears. Her eyes were swollen from weeping, yet the pain in her heart refused to fade. She cried until morning. What will happen to Miriam? Would Tony succumb to family pressures? Will Tony marry Barbara? Will Miriam stay and fight for her marriage? Or would Miriam walk away? Find out in the part 2 of Hidden Truth. Please watch, comment, like, and share. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Cheers.